de chicas bien lindas, bien inteligentes ellas y bien dulces. Hoy comenzamos con alguien de Filadelfia, nacida y crecida en Filadelfia, además en Mujer. Y ella además tiene experiencia porque ha vivido en otras partes de Latinoamérica, ha estado en Colombia, ha estado en México. Ella me contó que su papá era hippie. Y yo creo que eso sin duda ha influido mucho en su educación. Además nos están escuchando Alan Margolies y Laura Margolies. Bueno, Alison, bienvenida al programa y cuéntanos un poco de ti.
Soy Alison, mucho gusto a todos. Yo voy a hablar en inglés para empezar, si está
Perfecto,
bien.
claro.
Okay.
Alison habla español, como ya pueden ver, pero yo le dije a ella que se sintiera cómoda con el idioma que quisiera. Yo le voy a preguntar todo el tiempo en español. Alison, me contaron que tú haces yoga y que tú de joven tuviste como una experiencia bien interesante cuando viajaste aunque te interesaba cuando eras niña, pero cuando tú llegas a México encuentras que hay un yoga en México y que te tomaba 2 horas llegar a tu clase de yoga.
Sí. I had chosen to move to Mexico. I had been working in North Philly, Edison High School, and I really wanted to actually be able to communicate with the community of North Philly a little bit better in Spanish. My Spanish was not very good after some high school.
Su español es muy bueno.
After some classes in high school at Central High School. And so my family had supported me in being there for a year in Tlaxcala, Mexico, which is muy cerca de Puebla. And when I was there, I was in a small town, and after a while, I felt like I needed to branch out of that small town. And so I found a yoga studio in Santa Ana, Chaltepen, for those people from Puebla who están escuchando, which is a little town outside. And I went to a yoga class, and it was about $1 for a class, and the woman just played a tape of a relaxing man speaking Spanish. This time my Spanish wasn't very good, and then at the end she came around and she sprayed some lavender spray in our faces. I knew how to say arde, 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 which means burning in my eyes. And I had a friend with me from my town. When we left, I said, eso no fue yoga.
Eso no es yoga.
Eso no es yoga. So at that point, I went and I found some yoga studios in Puebla and listened to it in Spanish to help my Spanish. And the hardest part for me in the beginning was Shavasana, which is the end of yoga when you are lying down and relaxing. It actually means corpse pose, sort of a preparation for death. But as we practice it here, it's just a way to relax and meditate at the end. And that was the hardest part because my thoughts were constantly moving. So my goal wasn't necessarily to be able to do a headstand or be in a pretzel with my body, but to relax my thoughts and to understand Spanish better.
Alison, aquí ya tú has dicho varias cosas importantes. Una, que no todos los estudios pueden parecer yoga, pero no lo es. Entonces es importante reconocer qué es un buen yoga, qué es en realidad una clase de yoga y qué no. Y la parte del final hablaste, pero entonces, ¿cómo reconocer un buen sitio de yoga?
So I think at this point yoga it's a huge market, which is one of the reasons that I am doing what I'm doing right now is because I want people to be a part of the market and more people. So some of the best studios, truthfully, are in Center City and downtown with a really good practice, and there's yoga classes in gyms, and some of them are great. But when you walk into a yoga studio that just offers yoga, there's a different energy, and that energy is really important for when you're practicing, is to understand. That's what you're sort of there for. But also that there's different types of yoga. Vinyasa is one of the ones that's the most known. And Vinyasa is more of a flow, so you're moving the body a little bit more.
Más sobre movimiento.
Sí, más sobre movimiento. But if you don't have a strong practice or body awareness, you can hurt yourself because you're flowing so much. So there's other types of yogas, Hatha, Anusara, Ashtanga. There's different names that you'll hear. And you just want to ask when you go in and just make your teacher really aware of how strong is your practice. Have you done it before? If you're nervous, if you have injuries, if you're pregnant or thinking of getting pregnant, any sicknesses, so that the teachers will help you, so
Claro.
not being scared when you walk into a studio.
Claro, entonces lo importante es entrar, preguntar
Sí.
qué tipo de yoga tienen y que le expliquen un poco a uno en qué consiste ese yoga
Sí.
y que uno cuente exactamente
Yeah.
en qué estado está o qué espera de la clase de yoga, ¿verdad? Alison, ¿cómo es una sesión de yoga?
So it also depends. I've had a lot of teachers who have different opinions of how it should be. Many classes now have music the entire time. So from beginning to end, they'll have music that could be pop music, hip hop, a lot of energy sort of throughout the class, and then they'll sort of like a DJ. And I personally like to teach like that. I like to sort of DJ the energy throughout my class, and that's sort of how I was trained. But I also respect classes that have no music. You're really just with your thoughts.
Que estás, exacto, en silencio,
Exacto.
que es tan difícil estar en silencio
Yeah.
hoy en día.
Which is very, very difficult for many people, including myself. And I'm trying to practice more without it. And then you're going to have classes where there'll be more traditional music from India. And so you'll get a variety, and then you can choose as a practitioner like which one you want to take and what you want to try. And you'll start off with a little bit of meditation in the beginning, usually seated. They'll move you through a little bit faster in the beginning, so standing balance poses. And then towards the end of the practice, you might do some back bends and then come to the floor, stretch in a little bit more of a relaxed way before you do Shavasana at the very
Alison,
end.
¿cuál es la diferencia entre meditación y yoga?
So yoga, the point is that yoga is a moving meditation. So
Okay.
it's a way to connect an intention, which is different than a goal. So an intention for why you're practicing, your breath connected to a movement. So all of those three things are what make it yoga.
Intención,
Intención.
movimiento y respiración.
Sí, exactamente.
¿Por qué eso es importante, Alison?
That's a question for each individual, person. I think that for me personally, and what I see with a lot of the world right now is that people are often moving without a greater intention, meaning that, whether it's their job or whether, they're dancing or taking pictures of themselves to put on Facebook, that sometimes they're not thinking about what's that greater intention for themselves, the people around them, for the world, for the impact of what they're doing. And so a lot of times if you're doing something just for yourself, you sometimes quit and we stop, and when we take the time to create a greater intention for something bigger than ourselves, we'll keep pushing forward, but also we'll really think about the impact that that's making. And to
Claro.
connect that to a movement and to a breath within yoga helps you to keep yourself healthy and sustain it.
Claro, fíjense, cuando Alison habla de mantener como ser coherentes con la intención, la respiración y el movimiento, pues es muy lindo porque nos hace como conscientes del mundo que nos rodea, como como responsables sociales de que tenemos alrededor, y pues puede ser algo muy interesante para la juventud hoy en
Sí.
día. Alison, y para quienes apenas nos están sintonizando, estamos en el ritmo, estamos en Para ti, Mujer. Y estamos con Alison Margolies, quien es una persona bien interesante porque no solo hace yoga, sino ella también trabaja en diferentes escuelas con restauración, resolución de conflictos, que es muy distinto a decirte, oh, perdóname, discúlpame, es realmente una restauración que tiene mucho sentido con la práctica del yoga que ella está haciendo. Alison, estábamos conversando antes de este programa, antes de que vinieras, y a propósito, Alison tiene aquí materiales para mostrarnos para las personas que están en Facebook. ¿Por qué es importante? La pregunta suena tonta, pero ¿por qué es importante que los jóvenes hagan yoga, que hagan meditación? Estamos hablando de los adolescentes, preadolescentes. ¿Por qué es importante, Alison?
I think it's important for young people of any age, from any neighborhood, for sure. At this point, yoga is extremely sort of like a privileged practice to some extent. It requires money. The studios are in nicer neighborhoods. And so, one of my goals is to have a yoga studio that is within North Philadelphia. That's why it's called Namaste en el Norte. And because I spent many years in Kensington, it's important to have it there so that people don't have to leave their neighborhood, but also so that students can eventually be trained to be yoga teachers themselves, so that they are part of the market and they're able to make money. So, that's sort of where my mission is with the yoga, because there's so many different ways that you can make money these days. And so many of our students in North Philly are told you can only be a nursing assistant, you could have to go to the army, and so they cap out financially at a certain point. And yoga is something that you can practice and teach while when you're older, when you're pregnant, and and you can market yourself in many different ways. I think yoga is important for the young people because, especially in North Philly and through different urban areas, there's just so much stress that's going on within the schools. Unfortunately, there's lots of violence. There's stress for tests and for trying to meet the mark or whatever that means. And so for those kids, for those students to be able to have that time to to relax, but also with an intention and with a practice that's sometimes really, really, really difficult. My students who have kept up with it the most often were my dancers and my athletes, who were boys and young ladies who already had a physical practice, because it's not just relaxing when you're done.
Claro, y no sabemos vivir una vida tranquila, no sabemos darnos unos minutos de silencio, no sabemos, siempre estamos corriendo detrás del trabajo, de sobrevivir, detrás de la tecnología, que se ha vuelto también algo que estresa mucho a la gente. Alison lo estaba diciendo y su negocio se llama Namaste en el Norte, y es muy lindo, y esa es una de las razones por las cuales Alison está aquí en Para Ti Mujer, es porque ella es una enamorada de lo latino y una enamorada del norte. Y para las personas que nos están escuchando, porque sé que nos están escuchando en Colombia en este momento, en Ecuador y en Canadá, pero en la costa este de los Estados Unidos estamos localizados nosotros en Filadelfia, y el norte es donde está la mayoría de la comunidad latina, que no tiene acceso a muchas cosas, que la ciudad es como otra ciudad. Y entonces es muy interesante y es un motivo de orgullo tener a Alison en el norte, en el barrio, enseñando yoga. Alison, ¿dónde enseñas tu yoga?
Ahora, so right now I'm doing workshops, Spanglish yoga workshops at Tierra Colombiana. They have been just wonderful and gracious and kind to offer me their space. And so right now I'm doing it once a month on Sundays. And so hoping to do it more and partner with different organizations throughout North Philly. I taught for many years at Shanti Yoga Shala, which is where I was trained, and I practice at Three Queens Yoga, and so that's where I'll be going, which is down at 4th and Monroe Street. But right now I teach just workshops, so I'm not teaching from a studio. I decided to take a break from that and for me to practice more and then do workshops outside of a studio.
Alison, ¿y en qué tú dices un domingo al mes en Tierra Colombiana?
Ahora es un domingo al mes.
¿Y es qué domingos? Bueno, el próximo va a ser el 22 de enero.
Sí, sobre la fin de semana que viene, yo voy a estar en Tierra Colombiana, 1:30 hasta 3:30.
1:30 hasta las 3:30, dice $10 adultos, $5 todas las edades de 12 a 18. Y vamos a poner este aviso en el Facebook de manera que ustedes pueden estar informados. Alison, entonces tú estás el tercer domingo de cada mes.
Right now we're just right now we're just moving around. So hopefully we'll see, as we grow and sort of the interest. For right now, it's just me trying to connect people to the community, to yoga, and then from there, basically the community can choose, if they want me to, where they want me to teach and when they want me to teach. Right now, my last group is like 25 people, which is a large class. So ideally,
es enorme. En el norte de Philly esa clase es un orgullo. Te puedes sentir muy orgullosa de eso.
Thank you. So it's ideal actually to have it smaller at first, especially if the practice is new. So if there's a group of women who say, hey, there's 10 of us and we want to do it here, then that's the idea to do it for now. For probably the next few months is to have different groups and
diferentes grupos, diferentes lugares. Probablemente, por ejemplo, si nos escuchan de Taller Puertorriqueño, que es una nueva instalación, quizás allí también hay una posibilidad. Alison, veo que tienes aquí ciertas cosas. ¿Qué es esto? Voy a las personas que nos están escuchando en radio. Alison tiene aquí como unos bloques de colores muy lindos. Ellos son como de borrador, como de material de un caucho compacto. Tiene 2 bolas de tenis. ¿En qué te ayuda eso en hacer yoga?
So I think, yoga can be something that is, a one-time buy. So you can get a mat for $5 from Five Below. They're not the best.
Sí.
Eventually you want to spend a little bit more money. But I have blocks from Five Below and 2 tennis balls. And so if you just allow yourself to lie down on the mat and use the blocks either under your lower back, or you can put them right below your shoulder blades and lie down. The tennis balls you use to roll out different parts of your body, whether it be your thigh or back. And it's just a really therapeutic way throughout the day. If you can't leave your house to actually go to a class, which so many of us cannot, then you have to create your own yoga space in your home.
Y estas, las bolas de tenis que haces, Alison, las pones ahí a rodar y uno rueda
So you
ahí,
can
la
put
pone
them
atrás.
under your back, and I guess that'll be the thing that I'll show. You roll them under your back, and then you can lay on them on your thighs and roll them out. So it's sort of a way of self-massage.
Claro.
It's not always that comfortable at first, but you have to breathe through it, and your intention has to be that you're taking out that stress within the body. So it's always important to know that, tension and stress actually is what keeps us together, right? Like physically, but too much of it is always a bad thing. So it's about knowing that balance in your body and also in your life when you're
Alison,
practicing.
cuando tú dices tension, también en mi mente llega la palabra intention. Yo como con mi inglés un poco loco tiendo a mezclar todas las palabras. En este caso, y como hablabas antes de la intención, el movimiento, en este caso cuando haces como este relax, como esta relajación, hay que tener una intención también. Hay que tener siempre una intención en el yoga.
I mean, and that's the goal, and the truth is half the time I'll start off with an intention, and then at the end of my practice, I'll be like, I just thought about shopping the whole time. Like, I'll be upset at myself. I'll be like, wait, I wasn't even thinking about that. Or, so meditation is difficult. Having that intention in your mind is difficult, but it's important to try to go back to it when you can.
Claro. Para las personas que apenas nos sintonizan, estamos con Alison Margolies, que además sus padres nos están escuchando y les mandamos un abrazo enorme a ellos. Les agradecemos por haber traído al mundo y educado una persona como ella, que además nos ayuda en la comunidad. Alan y Laura Margolies, un abrazo enorme para ti, mujer. Ella está dando clases en el norte de Filadelfia de yoga, pero además ella también tiene una experiencia bellísima en las escuelas del norte de Filadelfia y en otras escuelas ahora mismo, con resolución, restauración. No quisiera irme sin que hablemos un momentito de restauración. Alison, ¿qué es lo que estás haciendo en otra escuela?
So I was really blessed and lucky for my first 4 years of teaching to be at John B. Stetson Charter with wonderful teachers there. And so although some of the pedagogy, which means sort of like the way that we taught the kids, is very strict at times, the main thing I took from there is restorative practices, which is the idea of people taking ownership, both teachers and students. And so, when you have a student who's selling heroin on the corner in North Philly and comes in and really doesn't understand maybe what the value of education, not education, but schooling, since there's two differences between, schooling and education, but what schooling does for him, because in that moment, maybe there isn't, right? So we trying to turn those students who might be negative leaders into positive leaders, knowing what their power can be, and if they make a mistake, not making them feel like they're a terrible person for it, because we all make mistakes, but being like, I take ownership for this, let's move it on, so that we can, lead the people around us. So right now I'm blessed to be able to work in some schools in Chester, working on those practices, and, and also it's sort of what we do in yoga. We take ownership, for the moment where we leave our intention, where we push ourselves too far and try to come back to ourselves.
Bueno, eso suena muy lindo, muy importante y muy necesario en todos nuestros barrios, y yo me atrevería a decir que todos los barrios latinos, Alison, porque desafortunadamente, aunque estamos en Filadelfia, pero es muy probable que en toda la costa este tengamos ese problema. De todas formas, las minorías son African Americans, Latinos, and we share problems, hay mucha pobreza, hay mucha dificultad de salir adelante y de tener posibilidades. Alison, un mensaje que le quieras dar a nuestras chicas, a nuestras mujeres latinas, no solo de aquí el este de Filadelfia, sino de otros lugares como Ecuador y Colombia.
So I think it's really important to know, especially one of the main differences I found between listening to yoga in English and Spanish, and why I love it in Spanish is that in Spanish they say nosotros esperamos, you know, nosotros llevamos los piernas por acá, entonces it's like, you know, nosotros is, you know, means, you know, us, and in English we say you do this and we do that, I mean you do this, so, you know, move your foot here, you know, move this there, so just listening to it in Spanish is just shows that Latino, yeah, like vamos, like Latinos have this sense of community that's just so beautiful. And so I spent time in Colombia and Medellin. There's beautiful studios. Yoga is everywhere. It's not just, you know, a privileged thing of the United States. It's in Latin America. So we need to bring it into Latino neighborhoods, you know, within the United States, because it's not a white thing or like, you know, a money thing. You know, it's everyone. It's from everywhere. You know, originally from India. So, so yeah, and also it's something that you can do pregnant, you can do when you're older, and it's important that we're all practicing that at some point to sustain ourselves in a healthy way.
Gracias, Alison. Pues no sé si ustedes captaron lo rico que es compartir tiempo con Alison. La volveremos a traer. Gracias de para ti, mujer, por estar aquí con todas nosotras, Alison, y todos para el norte de Philly. No se olviden de estar con ella este domingo, 22 de enero, de la 1:30 a las 3:30 de la tarde. $10 adultos, $5 de los 12 a los 18 años, y ustedes verán la gran diferencia. No se muevan, chicas. Quizás vamos a escuchar un poquito y nos vamos a un break. Vamos a ver si alcanzamos a escuchar un poquito de música. No se muevan, chicas, aquí seguimos.